So, when was the last time you saw your father? Did you anticipate to visit him at any point closer towards the prison break?
Well, exactly around the time when that whole thing happened, that I actually was hoping to go and visit him because I hadn't visited him for quite some time. And it was my personal reservation to go there. I had no intention of wanting to go into such a space to see him behind this glass and all of that. But I had made up my mind that, you know what, nah, it's been too long, and at least even if it would brighten his day or for us to just have a conversation in person, I should go visit him. And I mean, I didn't have the opportunity again, and yeah. But if it's one thing, we definitely spoke a lot on the phone, always WhatsApping, always calling, and anyone could tell you that he used to send a bunch of quotes, things from the Quran, anything that he stumbled upon, positive affirmations. If you think that you have a friend or a family member who sends you a lot of these chain messages, he used to do it 10 times as much, and people always knew that you could have spoken to him. But I wish that I had the opportunity to visit him and see him in person at least one more time. And who knows, I may have still been even today saying one more time and one more time, one more time. So
When you found out that the escape had happened, what did you regret the most, or what was going through your mind at that time?
It was really a matter of this cannot be happening. But then I guess sense came back in that is my father we're talking about. So anything is possible. And it's really a situation where I think he prepared his family well for any eventuality, meaning that whatever comes your way or whatnot, don't be surprised. Because I always knew him as this kind of rebel, always knew him as this kind of person who, once he is sold on an idea or this is what he's about, this is what he is going to do, much the same way that I am. So it just probably took me 5 minutes to reconcile that this is actually happening, and then from there it was a matter of how am I going to deal with this, how is this going to end, what is going to happen. And my wish at that point was that he would have probably been on a pirogue heading to Venezuela or escaping the country or something, or the police would simply capture him, and he would be back there safe and sound. That was my hope. But I guess finding out that he was killed, that he was murdered, it wasn't hard for me to believe at the same time. So, yeah.
The night he was killed, because I think it happened in the late evening.
Mm-hmm.
What are your memories of that night? What was the first thing that was going through your mind?
Well, for one, I can recall that my grandmother, his mother, had called me and asked if I'd heard anything. And I know that she was in the States at that time, and everyone in the family was saying that she was crying a lot and she was worried and all of these things. So she called me and had asked me, she was like, Nick, you hear anything? Anything at all? And I was like, no, I haven't heard anything. And the most we could do is just like listen and see what happens. And nothing has come up. I remember saying to her, well, I haven't heard anything on the news. So clearly nothing is about. And then I remember getting a phone call. This was after I'd fallen asleep in the wee hours in the morning, getting a phone call from my cousin saying, well, Nick, he was killed. And yeah, and that his body, there's a picture of his body on Facebook. And I was like, you're serious? And I remember having like gone up on Facebook and seeing that. And yeah, that confirmed my greatest fear in that moment. But it was not a matter of me bawling or performing or anything like that. I simply went over to my next grandmother and like I kind of shook her because she was lying on her bed, and I said, well, hey, so and she was like, yeah, I heard X, Y, and Z. And that was it. I just remember the house being in darkness and me walking through to her bedroom to tell her, well, X, Y, and Z, not knowing she was already aware. So, yeah.
The weeks between, well, I think it was maybe not weeks, but the days between him escaping to him being killed. At any point, did you, I don't want to say expect, but did you realize that this was a possibility? This could have happened?
I always knew that it was a possibility, but I felt as though it would have had a different outcome. Because my father, he is in Shubin, to be very plain and simple. So I felt as though he had thought this fully through and knew that, hey, this is my escape route, this is how I am fleeing the country, this is what I'm doing, X, Y, and Z. So even after his body was there, and even in the days leading up to the funeral, I was like, this is not so. That somehow he planted somebody else's body or something. Like I was thinking so many crazy things, but I guess seeing his body in the casket, that's when I was, because I mean, even the picture, I was thinking to myself that, well,
that doesn't look like him.
Not that it doesn't look like him, but it's a picture of his back. This could be anybody else. Or he could have taken out a picture, laid down in the drain himself, posed as if he had been shot and everything, and released this picture. Because I just knew that's the kind of brain he had. So it was very hard for me to know for sure that, nah, he really gone.
What that in mind, you've given us given me at least a pretty thorough look at what your life was like with this man who many would have just looked at as a convict, but to you he was much more than that. He was your father. What do you think is the most important lesson he has passed on to you in your youth, coming into manhood now, and all of the different things you're involved in? What do you think is the most important, the most powerful lesson that has stood out to you?
Be brave, be persistent, and go after what you want. That is, I think, the greatest thing that he has taught me, to never let up. I think that I have a fight and a spirit and a drive that is largely shaped by my father. Because I just knew him as that person who would go after what he wants. Starting a business, being able to, who knows, just do things that I guess the average person would think, hey, I'm not going to bother to do that. He had a burger cart at one time, and his intention was to have burgers there. He had his Islamic store where he was selling all of these products and stuff. He did a lot, I felt, but it just was never enough, and not a matter of not enough for him, but not enough to survive in this time or at that time. Enough to put food on the table, I guess, enough to really lead as a productive life as one would want.
One question I had in mind is not something that I heard, but it's something I did hear. I interviewed one of the investigators who investigated the prison break itself on the police side, and he said that there was a particularly high risk around your dad because they had received reports, and they don't know how true or false this is, that he had traveled to some Middle Eastern country.
No.
So as far as you know,
no. The only place my father has been outside of Trinidad is to the US and then back. And I think actually he would have gone through Canada in order to, this was something I found out recently. But no, he never went to the Middle East and stuff. And I mean, we have technology, you could pull up that kind of information, so no.
Yeah. Basically it. I think you've given us a pretty in-depth view of a side of a man, not a lot of people who are accustomed to seeing or hearing. But just one last question. I said that I had interviewed the Commissioner of Prisons last week, and he said that the incident, it remains an embarrassment to the prison service and to the national security agencies to this day. It's almost 5 years now, 4 years to be exact. Based on what you've seen through your own work, through youth advocacy, because I would imagine you speak to a lot of young men, how much do you think has changed from then to now?
I don't think anything of great significance has changed. I can tell you that from that moment, one of the things that I had vowed to do was help reform the criminal justice system in this country. And I've been very vocal and outspoken where that is concerned. So much to the point where even in the Senate having to debate two pieces of legislation back in 2017, one that had to do with bail and one that had to do with the pretrial process, I felt as though, you know what, look, I'm doing, it's less than 2 years and look, I'm already helping to change the criminal justice system. But to be quite honest, the kind of reform that system requires goes beyond legislation to people and what they're willing to do and willing not to do. Because and my overall philosophy is that in this country, if we want a better country, we could have a better country in the morning. But people are just so people. And because they are afflicted by their human nature, we have a society where corruption reigns free. We have a society where people know right from wrong but choose to do wrong. We have a society where people understand if collectively we take action on something, it will be fixed. Why do we have a prison in the capital? That does not make sense to me. Why do we have to have persons being transported every single day to only be told that their matter is being put off? Why can't we be saving millions of dollars by simply having video conferencing? These are the things that I would love to see changed. I would love our approach to prisoners to be different, offenders, so that it's not a matter of we have to take a retributive approach, but more of a restorative approach. I think that anyone who comes in, and especially my father being there for 6 years in remand, he should have been able to access a psychologist, been able to have health checks and all of these things, being able to have opportunities in that moment. Because the point is, you're going to, for lack of a better word, actually, yes, there is better words, but I'm going to use it based on how society sees it. Going to unleash someone back into society, at least you should have used that moment to probably change something with that individual so that they come out a better human being, so that they don't reoffend and return to prison, because we have extremely high recidivism rates. And I think that all of that can be prevented. We have so many students graduating from the University of the West Indies in social services and the likes, but yet we're not providing them with enough jobs. When we think about the school system, the amount of psychologists coming out of university, but yet why do we have one psychologist sometimes to 5 and 10 schools? These things aren't right. But yet we're spending money on nonsense in this country, and those are the things that annoy me. It bothers me to my core, because I know what I could do with $5 or $10 or $50. And when I think about a government or persons in position having access to billions of dollars, and we're not making the right use of that, when I think about some of the reports that I see coming out of Joint Select Committees, when I hear about some of the reports about different state enterprises and the likes, I am bothered. And I can't just sit back and take this anymore. As a citizen, as someone who is the son of a victim of a broken social system in this country, as someone who has to interact with these public spaces and services and stuff, for me to just simply sit by would mean that I am part and parcel, party to the nonsense that takes place in this country. So if it's one thing that has changed since my father's incident to now, is that I feel more empowered. I feel more of an obligation to do something in this country so that no one else has to undergo what he went through, what my family went through, what this country went through. So that is what I want to deal with. I want to ensure that we don't have to have another prison break like that in this country again, because we don't have to have it. 6 years somebody's on remand waiting to just find out, hey, your matter going to start for sure on this day. 6 years. Why should anyone have to wait a year Why should anyone have to wait 6 months? Why is there that uncertainty? We can clear the backlog. We can do so many things. We can push mediation, all right? And that's one of the things that I'm actually studying. So in terms of my thesis is alternative dispute resolution in a litigious society. So looking at the fact that we have mediation, arbitration, conciliation, negotiation, all part of our legislation and policy, why aren't we using that? But we're sending everyone to go to court, or everyone enjoys going to court to face or to have their day in court and stuff. And that's nonsense. We need to move from an adversarial society to one that looks at proper ways to resolve issues in our country. And I think until and unless we start looking through those lenses, we're not going to have the kinds of impacts that we want for this country to make it better.
At any point, did your dad, because I understand you've taken on a very different, path than he did when he was your age, probably.
Mm-hmm.
At any point, did he, while you were at university, did he express to you how proud he was of you to, all the work you've been doing?
Yeah, definitely he did, but it wasn't so in the beginning because he himself didn't understand why I needed to go to university. Neither did my mother. I remember asking them to get the money to go to university for registration, and they were asking, well, what you going there for? Why can't you just open a business? Well, I had a business at that point in time. I used to be selling herbal soaps and creams and lotions, going to the market on a Sunday morning and doing pretty well with that. My mother had a salon, my father had his Islamic store and all of these things, so it was very possible for me to just stay within a family business kind of setting, but I felt as though I could have done a lot more by going to university, getting educated, and helping out still with everything else there. So it took some time for them to understand what my vision was, but when that time came, I definitely got the support from my father. Without a doubt, I always felt in my bones that he was proud of me because especially he said it. And I think that a lot of people in society, a lot of parents need to say to their children how proud they are, because that will make the world of a difference. People don't tell the people that they love them, that they care about them, that they're thinking about them, that they appreciate them. And I think everyone just walks around in society with a particular perception of one another and a perception of themselves. And the less we talk about things with one another or express our feelings to each other, the more hardened we become, antisocial, and dismissive. So I'm glad that my father told me that he was proud of me, because if it's one thing, even in his absence, I still feel that he's proud of me.
Well, I think that's about it. Is there anything you'd like to say that I may not have asked that you would like the public to know?
One of the greatest lessons that I think me being able to speak out on all of this, one of the lessons that I think people should learn is be mindful of the things that you put out in terms of the things that you see and the things that you do, especially on social media when it comes to people dealing with tragedy. Because I remember going up on social media, reading under some of these news articles on Facebook and sitting down and reading hundreds of comments, sitting down for hours reading these comments about people saying that it's good for my father, he deserved to die the way he died, that his family would end up in the same way. And I could have decided to commit suicide. I could have said, that's it for me. I remember leaving home and going to work or going to school, and people coming up to me and asking me, "You the son of the criminal, is your father who they kill?" and all of these inappropriate things. And if I was not the individual who I was and am, I could have interpreted that in a particular way and acted on that in a very negative way. But thankfully, I came to the understanding very early that people are people, and they may say things, they may do things, and it may not necessarily be their intent to bring about a negative response or a negative impression, but that's just how human beings are. So it's a situation of forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Nikolai. I really appreciate you taking this.
No problem, man.
And it really gives some more depth and dimension to a person a lot of people would have just, easily discarded as a criminal. And as you said yourself, not to condone anything he may have been accused of doing, but it also shines a light a little bit, at least on the criminal justice system, and gives us some way or some idea of how we can improve and hopefully avoid this from happening.
Well, I think a light has always been shone on the criminal justice system, but it's probably been so blinding that as we approach it, we cover our eyes, not to see it, or to just simply avoid it. But every citizen in this country knows what is wrong with this country. We know who the people are that we could point fingers to. We know what corruption is taking place. We know the problems that are wrong with this country. But the issue is the right people don't get into the right positions. The wrong people do. So the people who have all these ill intents, the people who are easily swayed when you throw a couple 100,000 in front of them, those are the people who get through. And I personally want to see every single politician who is sitting in Parliament now gone. There is not one who I want to see come back in any incarnation of a party, because as long as you're able to sit in Parliament under one of these political parties that currently exist, you are party too. I would like to see someone take a stance where they can say, you know what, I don't like the direction of this party or whatnot, and I'm leaving based on that. And it's not happening. They will take the nonsense, they will sit on the backbench, they will do whatever, but you're remaining. So I don't want to see any politician come back in that parliament, because you had an opportunity. You had an opportunity, and what did you do with the opportunity? And I think that this country needs to wake up and recognize that. Don't say, well, no, well, this one, he don't have power and he don't have position and stuff. Well, then why are you there? Do something on your own. Break away. And if you're so good at representing, people will vote for you and not just because you're representing this party. So politics have to change in this country. Our leadership from the highest office comes straight down needs to change in this country. And it may sound radical, it may sound like a coup or whatever the case is, but even if we take it in increments where, you know what, all right, we start giving people another option, a third force, we start listening to what others have to say and not just having this kind of polarized look at, hey, these are the two main parties and stuff. I think we all have to give ourselves a chance, because it's not about giving another party a chance, it's about giving yourself a chance, because I think that the average person in this country wants to see themselves sitting in parliament, because they always say, and everyone does it, if I was there, I wouldn't have do this, or I would have handled this better, or how you could have do this nonsense, because everyone has their level of morality, all right? And I think that we need to see more of ourselves represented in institutions that govern the state, that provide leadership, that provide authority. So, yeah.
Nikolai Edwards, I just want to say thanks again for taking this time.
My pleasure, man.
I really appreciate